what led me into the body therapy work that I do now was that this continual rug being pulled out from underneath that continued to happen with my health. So tonsils at the age of 11, angular fever around 12, hepatitis B, I think 21, 22, and then chronic fatigue syndrome when I turned 25. And I'd gone to university and lasted halfway through, and then that didn't seem to be the right fit. I'd gone to nursing school. There was a lot of things that I had done that just didn't seem to land and find direct ground. And so I was living in Australia at the time that I got really ill. And for the first 6 months, I was predominantly bedridden. And for the first 3 years, I was 80% kind of out for the count, really. And during that time, there were very clear windows of perception that opened for me. I went to see a GP at the very early stages. This was in Melbourne, Australia, who also did Reiki. And from that experience, I would have energy for 3 or 4 days where I would have none for weeks prior. And so that led into seeing other healers.
Thank you so much, Michael, for joining me today. And we've been friends since last year.
Yes.
And to be honest, I really respect and admire the work that you've been doing because I personally have benefited from it and I'm really grateful for it because of the help. However, today really is about your journey. So I will pass the mic to you. I will let you tell people who are you and how to come to be the therapy.
Thank you, Ivan. Yeah, so I mean, every journey starts off like all of our journeys with our foundations. You know, were they stable? Were they rocky? Were they sufficient to need? Did they enable us to flourish? Or did they put a challenge or wedo in our way? And so I guess my foundational journey was one of a set of identical twins. We had divorce, acrimonious divorce between our parents, and then I stayed with my mum. My twin brother went to live with his father, and so we separated out. And then I lived in unstable housing with my mum for at least 2 years before we finally found stable housing with Kāinga Ora, Housing New Zealand as it was back then. And unfolding through all of this was my awareness that my sexuality was other than heterosexual, and this kind of stood out from the age of 5. And so there was always a sense of sitting as an outsider, sitting in a ground that was inherently unstable. Anything could be taken away, and my experience was that most things were taken away. So my twin brother, stable familial background, stable housing. You know, my first 8 years were all of the rugs being taken out from underneath. And what led me into the body therapy work that I do now was that this continual rug being pulled out from underneath that continued to happen with my health. So tonsils at the age of 11, angular fever around 12, hepatitis B, I think 21, 22, and then chronic fatigue syndrome when I turned 25. And all of those kind of precursors are not unusual for somebody with chronic fatigue syndrome. And, but it was like, you know, here was another rug being pulled out from underneath my sense of the world. And I had gone to university and lasted halfway through, and then that didn't seem to be the right fit. I'd gone to nursing school. There was a lot of things that I had done that just didn't seem to land and find direct ground. And so I was living in Australia at the time that I got really ill. And for the first 6 months, I was predominantly bedridden. And for the first 3 years, I was 80% kind of out for the count, really. And during that time, there were very clear windows of perception that opened for me. I went to see a GP at the very early stages. This was in Melbourne, Australia, who also did Reiki. And from that experience, I would have energy for 3 or 4 days where I would have none for weeks prior. And so that led into seeing other healers as well later on down the track, and seeing light coming from their hands, and seeing other doorways of perception open up for me. And these were like singular moments for the most part, that would kind of recognize that actually all that we see or perceive is veiled to a certain degree. We live conventional human lives in bodies. We don't see energies conventionally. We don't see auras. We don't see any of that kind of stuff. And so, but they sit in the background of who we are. So those doorways of perceptions open up till in my late 20s, I really started having a strong meditation practice and multiple hours a day. And this was part of my desire to find purity and wellness beyond my health status, beyond my queer status, beyond kind of any identifications of the wounds that I carried. I was trying to find a way to purify my being.
I thought it might be quite beneficial to. I mean, I heard about chronic fatigue syndromes through one of my friends years ago,
Yeah.
but I know till today it's still not a well-known illness. How would you describe it?
So it differentiates. It's a raft
Mm,
of conditions which seem to the core condition, of course, is chronic fatigue, and there are multiple triggers. Can be multiple triggers for that fatigue itself, and at the same time, there can be very different experiences of chronic fatigue. Some people have major fatigue. Other people get major uh, joint aches, muscle problems. That seems to be, muscle challenges can seem to be part of chronic fatigue, whether it's pain or
mm,
whether it's fatigue in the muscles, and it can absolutely devastate one's
mm,
sense of what
mm.
the world is and one's sense of one's ground.
Big,
And
big,
and
big.
I'm 35
Yeah,
years on from the initial diagnosis,
yeah,
and I still do symptom management every day. I have
yeah,
to watch certain things for myself, like too much digital time, too much Wi-Fi, too much stimulation. There's eating good food. Watching where my energy is scattered, and a lot of this
mm,
is because it's a condition which is often oriented around how much energy you have in the tank.
wow,
So one learns what is energy for you, what builds energy, what sustains energy, what stabilizes energy, what helps clear emotional, mental, physiological energy that is stuck. So you have to work with the raft of what you've brought to the point,
yeah.
um, and work through those inhibitions. And sometimes some of those things are simply environmental and require you to orient yourself positively to what keeps you steady and stable. There's a lot in the unfoldment of chronic fatigue as a disorder. But in my case, it was and has been a deeply spiritualizing journey. Yeah.
It's very interesting you say the GP that you see actually are also Reiki.
Therapist, yes, she was.
Yeah, yeah, and that is incredible because people wouldn't put two to two together
No, no,
as
no. It just, I look at my path, and I've had as many challenges as I had along the path. I've had so much grace.
yeah,
And so, for anybody out there that is suffering from chronic fatigue, go deep, trust in
yeah.
grace, really kind of reach out for support, make sure that you get the supports that you need.
And so I think it would be quite interesting to unpack how that journey unfold from the beginning of getting someone who's also Reiki therapies that embark the spiritual journey, but also that healing energy journey that you now are
Oh, yeah.
someone who equally having that knowledge and also insight and a natural healer. That's how I would describe you
Yeah.
because like there were a few incidents where either you just sense that I have something blocked or you just touch my hand and then you say, oh, I have blockage on my chest and all that, I was quite amazed by it because I didn't even tell anyone. Like I can feel the sensations on my chest was really tight. And I can feel that it's not like a heart attack or something, but it's just something that I can't describe. And just by you touching my hand, is you immediately,
I don't think I'm any different than anybody else, to be honest. I think, those acknowledgements were sitting with you as a friend. It wasn't in a therapeutic space per se. It was just
yeah.
really, really sitting with you as a friend and getting to
Mm,
know you and going. And when I hugged you, it was like, oh my God, this is the tightness that he's carrying.
yeah. Yes.
So often, this is this is this. I guess this is part of the healing journey, is being
Mm.
seen, parts of ourselves being seen and validated and honored, and nothing wrong with them, just kind of going like, wow, this is what you're carrying.
But Michael, I mean, like, even till today, I still actively trying to get my body relaxed.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
after you told me like, oh, I brace myself all the time. I was like, oh my god, there's a thing I've been doing for such a long time. And since then, every time when I start feeling all my muscles start tensing out, I would just say go, and that's been a help because that's one. But let
Yeah.
me stop myself here because that's what I really want to get into. Like
No, no, no.
I
It's we share journeys,
Yeah,
you know.
but because I have anxiety for many years, like I take medication, I see GP and all that. No one have been able to pick it out. It's like how I tense my muscle, tense my body, even every minute single of the day. Of course I am exhausted, and because of what you say, I was able to actively, consciously let my body relax.
Yeah, and look, I have to say that's a win-win for me because when I hug you now, there's so much softness and I feel the fact that you've found in yourself a
Mm,
little bit more capacity just to settle and find some more ease. That's,
mm.
I mean, that's a beautiful thing.
Wow, that's very well put together. So what happened? How it unfold?
From the experiences that I did have, with energy healing, with seeing energy from practitioners' hands, with seeing inside somebody's body at one stage, that all of these things kind of said, well, there's some juice here for you.
Mm,
You can't do these other things currently, but
mm.
you can explore and play with these subtle energies.
Do you want to give a little bit more visual descriptions of what exactly you saw when you saw the energy from the
Uh,
healer?
as I said before, these were moments. These
Mm,
were singular, usually singular moments, and they would not repeat themselves because they
mm,
were like the universe going like, okay, these are just stores of perception. You don't need to see them all the time. They are there in the background. But
mm,
so I just want to acknowledge that it's nothing fabulous. It's
mm,
nothing, I don't want to load anything into that space other than it was kind of an experience. And it reinforced for me that, that the path that I was on had some measure of validity, some measure of
mm,
ground.
mm,
So when I was living in northern New South Wales, I was seeing a quite refined healer there, and I'd seen her maybe a couple of times, and on the second time and the third time that I saw her, I think I only saw her maybe 3 or 4 times, something like that. That I was lying down, she was putting her hands either on or over me, and I was seeing vortexes of light
mm,
spiraling out of her hands and into my body,
mm,
and I was like, is, is this true? And so I would close my eyes and open them again and did it a number of times so that it was kind of like, I don't want to be in some kind of illusionary state
I hear you.
imagining that this
Yeah.
is going on. I really want to
Yes.
assess that my experience is measured with my sight and
Yes.
external side. And so it was. And so I was like, okay. And, down the track, studying some of the healing books that were around at the time, especially in terms of energetic healing. A woman called Barbara Ann Brennan wrote at least a couple of foundational texts at the time. And one of them had pictures of exactly what I'd seen.
Wow.
Exactly the same vortex of light coming out of people's hands. And this seemingly is what the chakra system, the energy system that sits along our spine. It operates in a vortexual fashion, spirals in,
Yes.
spirals out, but in a vortex form. And so it was kind of, I had an experience. I found the theory later. And so that's always great to kind of like, rather than theory first and experience later. I like the experience first, and then you kind of go like, well, what was that about? And then you have
Yes.
to kind of find to see if anybody's written about it. And sometimes people haven't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you'll have an experience which is not out there. And
Here, Michael, because you're talking about we are a rational being and we saw something that outside of the context, our human understanding. And so it can
yeah,
be quite frightening and also at the same time questioning our own insanity is like, is this real?
yeah.
And so at that moment, you're not freaking out, but you just want to make sure that people so-called you hasn't lose your mind.
There is a little freak out. I mean, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
this is kind of like something you've never experienced or seen before. So of,
Yeah.
of course, there's going to be a little kind of internal, like, what the?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you just actively seeking for a way to help yourself. But then again, like after that experience, and then you come to this someone who actually have written a book about what it looks like. I think that's amazing.
It was really useful. It was great clarification. And,
Yes.
so sometimes it's kind of like both and.
Mm,
I'm just thinking about it now. Sometimes I will do the reading,
mm,
especially in terms of meditation and stuff. And
mm,
so you might get a meditation framework and you build a practice around that framework. And because you have that framework, you have the experiences that the framework speaks into. Without you actually doing that groundwork, you would not have the experiences. I guess it's similar to a scientist who's looking at atomic energy, like Oppenheimer and stuff, that he had internal thoughts, but then he had all the groundwork in terms of scientifically. And
mm,
so,
mm,
and then that from that monumentous clash, literally
mm,
atomically, that
mm,
we move into the atomic age. And
mm.
he was one of the pointers of the energetics sitting underneath our conventional reality.
And this kind of incidents that also happened other times as well. But as you described, it wasn't ongoing. It almost like just a one-off, and then you never see it again.
So from the Reiki experience with the GP, my flatmate had done some Reiki classes. And so I just got her to show me where the hands-on positions were. And from that, for me, that was an integral part of my healing journey. The capacity to
Mm,
self-soothe, the capacity to lay your hands on and to receive nourishing touch from yourself
wow.
was an incredible part of the journey. There's a lot about Reiki that for me I've left behind, all the symbols, all the rest of it, but the where the energies are oriented within the body and the capacity to put your hands on and for there to be automatic relationship, automatic
Mm,
energy kind of starting to shift. And that was foundational for my sense of of greater and greater well-being and how deep the energy can move into and through the body. I still am so grateful for that foundation, but it didn't lead me strongly enough into where I wanted to go. So I was living in the Bay of Islands at that stage and had a friend there who had incredibly awful weeping psoriasis. And so and I'd done maybe a couple of sessions with him. And one day we were at the beach together and I was like, okay, let's just do some work because he was having a
mm,
really bad pain day.
mm, mm,
And so I was holding him at various points on his body. And then it was just like his body opened up. So it was just like I could see him as a whole.
mm.
I could see the fact that the whole had a skin surface, musculature underneath that, organs within that, skeletal system within that, a spinal column. All of the kind of physiological layers were present in terms of witnessing and work. It was
Wow.
just like like a like a cadaver, but he was alive.
Yes.
You get
Yeah.
to see the whole internal structure at the same time as you were seeing the full human being. So that was another kind of wow, okay, that was fascinating.
When you share it with me, it's like it's one off. All this is just one time happened, and then it kind of like, okay, now you got it, you
Yeah,
see it.
yeah,
That's enough for you.
that's enough.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
these things are kind of gifts of perception. Some people will have those gifts of perception integral to their work.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's absolutely fine. That is, that's their gift. That's their unique holding and their unique quality that they pour
Absolutely.
forth. In the work
Yeah,
that I do, I'm much more kinesthetic. I don't see things visually. I'm kinesthetic and feeling. And so those are the kind of orientations that I get. I mean, like, who doesn't want a movie playing out in front of their eyes? It's just,
I know
you know,
exactly.
it's just not my path. I've had to step into the dark, and this is a lot of the healing journey.
Yes,
So a lot of the healing journey for all of us who go through points of crisis are the capacity to step into the dark and to move into the darkness of our own beings, to sometimes spend, as I have in many ways, probably decades there, in varying degrees.
I know it's like anything. So at first it worked, but it only worked into a certain point, and then you realize that okay, you need to go to further a bit more. I know you also study as a yoga teacher because of your own lived experience, and so the journey started as you need to find something that worked for you.
I needed to find tools that worked for me in order to maintain some continual measure of wellness and stability within that wellness and capacity to work and serve and do enough. I guess the biggest part was life is ever moving. Our
Yes.
thoughts move, our emotions move, our physical sensations are in ceaseless movement. Even when we sit, we can feel everything kind of the energy moving within our bodies, all of these kind of things. There's always consistent moving through the body. And in my youth, consistent movement. Nothing was stable, for the most part. And so there was a deep part of me that was kind of like, who am I? How do I find that
Mm,
which is inherent ground? How do I find my own sense of self being a twin and my twin brother passing away in a car crash at 29? There are foundational templates that I had to find a way of going like, well, I'm a singularity now from the age of 30, past two months before our 30th birthday. How do I come into a relationship as one singular individual? And if you are, this is my thoughts here. Everybody else has their own different thoughts and journey. For me, is I needed to find what was true ground for me. I needed to find something which was inherently stable that I could keep coming back to and find deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper resources.
yeah.
So meditation was integral and still is integral to that path. And yoga was part of that unfoldment in terms of just simply recognizing that my body was kind of flexible and I had a skill and I could maybe utilize that and explore some elements of my strength within my body. So that was, for somebody who felt like their body was not dependable, to find some measure of consistency and strength and capacity. That was really useful to have that sense of validation that my body
Mm,
could do things and could do some things quite well. And so, yoga, unless it's deeply applied to psychology, unless it's deeply applied to the emotions, unless it's deeply applied to the energy body, it's another form of exercise, essentially. It
yeah.
can soothe, it can balance, it can be a fantastic form of exercise, but unless those other elements are integrated, it just maintains itself on the surface there. And so
Wow.
it can have its limitations in a Western expression.
I like what you say as well. You're also saying that you're actively seeking things that working well for you, but and understand why it worked well behind the theory. So it's not just about mindfulness. Everybody do just 5 minutes mindfulness. You actually go deep into understanding how it connect to your energies, to
Yeah.
the way that it enhance your well-being, and
Yeah.
really having a depth of understanding why it works.
Well, I think this was the nature of the depth of the chronic fatigue syndrome journey,
Mm,
is that you have to find what really works for you. You
mm,
know,
Mm.
And for everybody's journey is going to be entirely different there. And you also have to really know what doesn't work for you.
True.
You have to
Yeah.
really say no. You have to really acknowledge which those things in your life that do not foster longer term, ongoing, sustainable energy. And that can
Mm.
be, everything from food to types of relationships to types of spiritual practices. Anything which provides a measure of constraint eventually has to be let go of.
Wow.
You have to keep shifting and changing, because something that might be useful along the path no longer is useful.
Wow.
So chronic fatigue syndrome keeps you on your toes, and keeps
Yeah.
asking for greater and greater and greater depth in order for you to reclaim the ground
Yeah.
that is your true self.
And if people don't know, it's like from knowing you, it always felt like it's 24/7, isn't it? Like you always have to put in the effort to have that enough juice in your tank to carry on every day. So it's not just like I do it today, tomorrow, sweet as I don't have to do anything. So you
Mm.
have to keep doing it.
No, no, I mean, it literally is like a meditation practice.
Mm,
It's a day thing. And,
mm,
and it's not like those practices do not support you. What they do is they give you so much more. I mean,
mm,
honestly, from the heart, this is the beauty of the chronic fatigue syndrome journey for me,
mm,
is
mm,
that by moving beyond the constraints, moving through the constraints, finding support in order to move in and through and with kindness and compassion and depth and capacity, your life becomes so much richer, so
mm,
much more
mm.
full of grace, so much more full of compassion. And this is not just compassion for others, it's self compassion as well. Because,
Wow.
honestly, I F up multiple times, not always in a day, but multiple times in a week. I will have to readjust.
Mm,
I will have to take stock of where I place my energies, where it hasn't been
wow.
constructive, and reorient myself back to the practices that work well for me.
And so let's go back to what you talk about with the meditation.
Meditation has some absolutely key components to it that bring us back to ourselves. So one of the key frameworks of meditation, and you keep coming back to it, is to sit with.
Mm,
You are simply sitting. That's that's
mm,
that's it. Sitting comfortably, sitting with a spine that feels aligned. You don't, feels aligned, feels integrated. You're not looking for a round, rigid spine. You're just looking for the sense of where the spine sits in relationship to the hips and rises up, and the head is supported therein. So you have the sense of aligned relationship within the body,
mm,
and within that sense of aligned relationship, everything passes. So the worst of oneself, the best of oneself, the dreams that one has, the fantasies that one has, the contractions against life, the antagonism towards self, towards another, towards aspects of life, the desire to remove yourself from certain experiences in life. All of this is what occurs in meditation. And so you learn to
mm,
sit with. You
mm,
learn to sit with, but it's by the sitting with. It's by the consistent coming back and coming back and coming that you'll be presented with all of the aspects of yourself. And all of those aspects really just ask for kind attention. So some people, for me, I had to really claim that ground. So
yeah.
meditation there's so many different forms.
Yes.
So there's so many different forms. Some are sitting based, some are movement based,
Yeah.
some are you can meditate lying down, which only achieves so much, but is important at times in moments where you really need support and surrender. So
Mm,
meditating lying down can really be so useful at times and can provide so much grace.
mm,
But if all you do is meditate lying down, your body keeps collapsing. Eventually, you have to align the spine and you have to sit up. And both can be used around the
mm,
same time. You can lie down for a certain part of the meditation and then you sit up. Or you do one practice lying down and you do another practice sitting up. There's also meditation through movement where you are actively settled within the body. You are compassionate within the mind, compassionate within the emotions, and you are moving through life. And you are
wow.
steadily, steadily, steadily allowing life to move through you, which is exactly the same as sitting with in the meditation form, but you are actively involved in life and you are allowing yourself to kind of be present. with. So this is, whether you have a formal meditation or a non-formal, the capacity to be with as things are, the capacity to find a kind relationship, to persevere through the most challenging of emotional and mind states and physiological states as well. Yeah.
And I think if people hasn't figured out, you also qualify as a meditation teacher.
So last year, I did a 3-year training program, sort of 6 months each year, and then 6 months on in distinct training relationship, and then 6 months of kind of actually integration time, which was really, really, really useful. Though that balance between those 2 points. So I did something called the realization process. Trained in a form called the realization process by a teacher called Judith Blackstone, based in New York, a former dancer who experienced that in her late 20s. So she had a major spinal challenge and could not dance anymore, but could still teach, but sometimes had to teach lying down, had to still so she had to come into relationship with her body in a very, very different configuration. And it was from that journey and that work that she said came to her. She
Wow.
did not seek to cultivate it. It was a gift to her. And so she is simply passing on the gift of that work, which is a beautiful, beautiful essence of a gift that moves through you and you share it on, which if you're lucky enough in life, that's what your life becomes.
Well, which is what you're offering to many people as well.
I hope and trust that I honor that the gift of what has occurred through my life passes through me and passes as a gift to others in a way that supports them on their journeys, and that is true and authentic and purposeful for them at the time that it feels right for them to come and see me. I'm not the only healer in the universe. There are many different forms of healing and appropriateness, and each one of us needs to find those forms that are right for the time.
I mean, I've been told every time when you meditate, you just have to see outright, but no one have actually explained why you need to see outright, isn't it? I mean, like almost like I know, but why? But you just explain why you need to have that. It's not just about the energy flow, but also understand how it all connected, like to your
Yeah.
body.
Well, I mean, honestly, love, there's more to that. So
Yeah,
when,
absolutely.
so the lying down framework of meditation, that allows you to surrender. That allows you to let go. That allows you to know that you are supported on all levels of your being. When you are
Yeah.
collapsed, you are supported. What the
Be-
upright, and so this is
yeah.
this capacity for surrender, the lying down meditation. The sitting up is the capacity to engage the will. So I'm willing to sit with this material. I'm willing to be with it, even if it's challenging. I take this one breath at a time.
Wow.
So the breath is always the comfort here.
Wow.
You
I
know.
love it. It's give me a shiver down my spine. So that's
Mm.
amazing. Because the Western concept of mindfulness as a Eastern person or Chinese who I brought up with all the understanding, I always felt like there's a lack of depth. It's almost like too shallow. It's just like, oh, mindfulness. And then no, it's more to it. I know more to it, but I don't have the knowledge and understand to explain what it is, and you just describe it beautifully. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go back to your journey.
Okay. So yes. So back to the realization process and what it's about. So most of us, we have a head that thinks, we have a body that follows our head that thinks. That is the conventional Western approach to, like, we think, therefore we are. This is Descartes. There, but actually we think because there are thoughts that pass through us. We feel because there's emotions that pass through us. We sense physical sensations because we have a body which is constructed in that ground. And so, and yes, wait, there is more, as the advertisement goes. So
Yes.
inside the body is not just muscles, not just bones and flesh and nerve fibers and cells. Within each cell, according to new physics, there is 99.9% space or energy moving through space conventionally. So, but it is more space that every atomic cell, every atom has more
mm,
space in it than it
mm,
actually has substance. It's
mm,
0.01% substance. It's 99.99% of space. So to have that as we are living with these dense things that
mm,
we kind of experience the firmness and the softness of our bodies. And so we're used to this material realm as the sole point of focus. But each of us also, we get up every morning and we go like, I don't feel like I've got much energy this morning.
mm,
Or I've got so much energy in the tank. So we are assessing the day through our bodies, but with the energy and the sitting is clear. Like, is that supporting us? Is the energy there for us? So we're both physical beings. We are beings of energy, and this is emotional energy as well as psychological energy. There's energy on multiple levels in our beings, and then deeper than that is the space in which we
mm,
sit. And it's not just in which we sit within the space of the room. If you look around the room, there's more space within the room than there is objects.
mm.
And the same applies into the internal space of the body. This is the realization process work, that
Wow.
actually it's a reclamation of the internal space of the body. We are so used to sitting on the surface of ourselves. And what the realization process does is enable us to sit deeply in every part of our body, full of rested in that space, rested
Wow.
in the fullness of that space within the framework of every part of our body, from the soles of our feet to the tips of our fingers to the tip of our nose to the top of our head to everything within those borderlines.
Wow.
We can sit comfortably and restfully and resource from the depth of that spaciousness that is already grounded within our bodies, already grounded,
Wow.
already resourced, already present, already spacious, nothing to do.
Wow.
And so we have the opportunity by coming through there's lots of different practices within the realization process. There's core practices and then there's supportive, and each of them is basically a portal for helping you to kind of
Mm,
find more space either within the physical body itself, to kind of settle within the physical body, to let the mind settle and be resourced and rested within the physical body, to kind of feel that the body is settled down towards the ground, to have the body as the foundation for one's mind, to really feel like, here is peace, here is stability, here is stillness. And if we're going back to everything else that I've said, here is the ground that I was looking. I can rest in that ground. I can be stable here. I'm going to fluctuate multiple times a day. There's going to be,
yes.
lots of earth.
Yes.
But then I go like, oh, okay, I'm getting carried away, or I've lost myself a little bit today, or in
Mm,
just this
mm.
moment. Okay, let's just settle into the soles of my feet and into the internal space of my feet,
Wow.
and let
So
my
it's the
body be supported in that. Let the rest of the
yeah.
body rest on that foundation. So it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful method for really coming back to oneself. Embodiment is a big term
Yeah.
that's available these days. And this is a huge embodiment tool, because what it really does is it gives you back to yourself in an unconditioned manner.
I can I just say it's amazing because I know for meditation, usually people encourage to come back to their breath. You saying for realization process, it's not just coming back to your breath,
Yeah,
it's to coming back to that space, the embodiment,
absolutely.
which is a lot more.
Yes. And one of the difficult processes within the realization process, at least for me, and it's more fluid these days, is that you can be grounded in that inner space and the breath simply passes through that ground.
Wow.
So if you think about the waves on top of the ocean, yet the ocean is deep and rested and grounded, it's a similar analogy, that the waves are simply the breath in and out, and yet the internal space of the body is completely rested.
Wow.
And so
It's so
there's this
powerful.
so there's this beauty. There's this real beauty of having ground again. The breath passes through, okay, these emotions passing through. Again, it's another great capacity to anchor in, to kind of really, really be supported. Most of us reach externally for supports.
So Michael, I mean, I know we kind of jumped very quickly from your Reiki and yoga to realization process.
Yeah.
The fact is, like the journey is much longer to get you to where you are today.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a shortcut or anything. You really
No.
have 35 years of
35 years.
lived experience, but on top of that is that ongoing journey of learning and also,
Every day,
yeah.
every day I sit down with, meditation practices, often similar ones, sometimes new ones, but mostly the same. I have a body of work that I keep coming back to. But the path, every day there's more learning.
Mm,
Every day there's more
mm,
unfoldment. Every day there's more to kind of learn with and from. Every
mm,
client session that I have a good framework. I have
mm,
good skills and good foundations. I deeply honor my clients' journeys. And I feel really privileged to sit in this space with them. But every session is an unfoldment. Every
mm,
session is kind of like a dance. Like it really is like a dance with somebody. You are listening and tuning into their energies. You are listening and tuning into the space that is holding both of you.
mm, mm,
It's a real there's the beauty of life is that
mm.
for as long as we get to live it in these little beings that we have, is that we get to explore and play and unfold and sometimes in ways that you never could have conceived.
Yeah.
It's so
Yes.
life is so can be so challenging and can be so exquisite. It's such a beautiful thing.
And beside realization process, you also are shame therapy as well, isn't it?
So I went from Reiki through to in 2008, I encountered a form called Shen therapy. I was seeing a psychotherapist at the time. We'd done maybe a dozen sessions. I felt like I'd gone to I could do this for the rest of my life, which, a lot of psychotherapists are like, yeah, come every week.
Mm,
You can unfold and have that support unfolding. And it's kind of like, that seems quite expensive for somebody who has a health condition and is on a limited income.
yeah.
The psychotherapist, she had the only then Shen practitioner in New Zealand utilizing her rooms once a week. This is in Auckland. And I had her flyer at home for a year. And because my
Mm,
income was very low at the time, because of my health condition, I was like, I really can't afford to do, it's a little bit expensive and all the rest of it. And so I kind of considered it and put it aside. And the psychotherapist said you should go and see her. And so that was call number two. And somewhere I can't remember what the kick in the pants for call number three was, but there was a third kind of kick in the pants, and I was just like, okay, I surrender. You're kind of saying, I need to do this, and so I'm just going to book in, and the money will come, which it did. Thank you, universe. And within 5 sessions, the issues that I was dealing with about specific familial dynamics, they were resolved within 5 Shen sessions.
wow.
It would just closed that loop of unfoldment for me. And so I was like, dang, that's good. And because I played with energy healing and stuff in my late 20s and had taken a distinct break from it,
Mm,
I was like, okay, here's a form that seems to really work. And then the psychotherapist and her friend, they got the teacher of Shen therapy to come to New Zealand. He was in retirement. He was in his late 70s. And so he did 4 out of the 5 training courses that I was on in order to become a Shen therapist. Yeah. So that was 6 years part time from late 2008 to late 2014, and I got my qualification early 2015. So I've been in practice now for just over 10 years. And the essence of Shen therapy is helping the emotional body move through its contracted states, helping it
mm,
find more resource, helping it find more depth and ground and allow those emotions that have defined one so to move through, to be uplifted, to as is right and timely for the individual. Shen works really well when shit is hitting the fan. There's a wave of emotional energy that is already moving through, and so Shen can really help that energy to move through at a greater and more integrative speed. And so yeah, Shen can be really useful during those processes, as standalone or as part of a multitudinal of healing supports. So I did the esoteric healing journey when I was in my late 20s, just after my twin brother had passed. I'd already booked into a course which was called The Language of Energies and was based around a woman kind of connected with the Theosophical Society and writing these very intense and deep and convoluted books around the forces that are at play within the universe and how we come into relationship with those forces. So it's wide and deep and broad and yeah, and a lot to study within that template. I think there's maybe 20, 30 books. And each book is kind of a fullness within itself. And so I started that journey in my early 30s. And I came back to it maybe around the similar time that I started with the Shen therapy as well. But for me, it's I started at a school that was exploring what was called natural healing or esoteric healing, and I did 2 out of 3 years of the training there, and I had to step away because my body was not ready for some of the strength of the meditation forms. I had to
Wow.
find more depth and more ground and more stillness within the forms themselves that were on offer. I had to tweak the forms to my own sense of the sensitivity of my body. And so those are the forms that I work with on a daily basis. I still work with those esoteric meditation forms. But the realization process supports the depth and substance of the energies that are moving through. So you come into relationship. It's like you don't just train your mind, you train your body. You come into relationship with your emotions and come into a balanced honoring of those. There's also the energy body and its own desires. And there are there's lots of levels of unfoldment for each one of us as human beings. And space is one thing of coming into relationship. The energy body is another thing of coming into relationship with, and the different components of that. So there's a lot of work, which is probably why I've been on this path for 35 years and still feel like I've just got my toes just at the edge of the water.
How can people find you?
I have a Shen therapy website. It's called www.emotionalwellbeing.co.nz. And I guess, that's at the heart of my journey is emotional well-being, how to support us to feel well in our hearts, well enough in our hearts that we can conduct every day with a sense of engagement and gratitude and capacity. Yeah. Yeah.
If people haven't picked it out, like you have done a few sessions with me as well, and I have personally felt it truly amazing and beneficial. There were a few times when there's like a synchronicity between us. I remember one time I felt like I was being baptized and were in the water. There was just a visual that came into me, and then immediately you say, "Imagine you are in the water." I was like, "What the f?"
Yeah.
And after the session, I said, I felt like I was being baptized, and you said you felt that too. And there were another time I felt like I was really out of order, and somehow toward the end, I felt something shifted, like something was put back into order, and I even had that visual seeing things that kind of come together. And then I start feeling better again because I was a little bit down at the time.
Yeah. Look, the reality is I've had a huge amount of grace and a huge amount of support, and the right supports have come my way. And so if I have the gift of stepping into a supportive role with somebody, it's a privilege, always is a privilege, always is a gift. It's always an unfoldment that is kind of unknown to me until we step into that space. I guess it's dancing together. You may have steps that both of you know, but both of you are dancing in the present moment to the music. You may not have heard that piece before. Everything is unfolding in that moment. So the work itself is always a dance, and an unfoldment. And I do my best to honor that dance and that unfoldment and the spiritual intent and the challenge that you're bringing. So
what can people expect when they come to you?
Okay. It depends what they're coming for. So if they're coming for realization process training or facilitation, that will be conducted sitting, standing, potentially lying down as well. but not
Yeah.
in a way where one is invited to simply let go of one's mind and one's emotions and one's body just to kind of fall back. So the
Mm.
realization process is about reclamation. So even if you're lying down or sitting up or moving, it is about being present within the inner space of the body and inviting in processes which invite deeper and deeper presence and mental integration. So the mind has somewhere to rest. So that's the realization process. With the Shen therapy, there's a massage table with what basically is a big camp stretcher on top of it and a mattress on the camp stretcher that somebody can just rest on. I have my hands both on top of the body and underneath. That's hence the camp stretcher. I can put my hands underneath. And I'm using bioenergetic flows, the flow of energy that moves between the hands, in order to facilitate both deeper states of relaxation and allow emotional upliftment of where the energy may feel inhibited or stuck, or asking for deeper kindness and attention, deeper compassion, longer holding. And, sometimes within that process, I'll be inviting in the client to pay attention to certain spaces within their body, to deepen the breath potentially. Sometimes the clients will move into sleep and be snoring all through the session, and that's a beautiful thing. For a person to let go and trust you that
Mm.
deeply is a beautiful thing, for the body to let go. And for some people, they never get there.
Mm.
There's a big defensive mechanism that means that the surrender to sleep
Mm.
is a difficult thing to be trusting there. So we deepen the process of relaxation there,
Mm.
and deepen the process of integration where the mind and the emotions can sit more deeply with one another. And so, yeah, so the sessions tend to take usually between an hour and a half on the table, depending on the work and the depth of the work. The deeper the trauma, the longer the time.
Mm.
The newer the trauma or the newer the challenge, the less time that seems to be needed. It's the waves of energy moves through quicker. The deeper the entrenchment, especially if the trauma is foundational,
Wow.
then that may take, and if it's both foundational and deep,
Mm.
shattering.
Mm.
If the trauma is shattering, then that work requires deeper support and sometimes longer sessions. And I charge the same whether the session, sometimes I've been, sessions tend to last 2 hours, and I have been known to go up to 4 hours with a client,
Wow.
because
Wow.
that time is absolutely required in order
Wow.
for their nervous system to reset, in order to honor the depth of what they have had to hold, and to find the measure of reset from the nervous system to kind of come back to itself and to find enough ground to step out the door again,
Mm.
and be able to meet the conventional life. So, but most sessions tend to take about 2 hours, unless it's a relaxation session, and that's about an hour and a quarter. I use flower essences in the work as well, which help support the emotional body's unfoldment.
Mm.
And I can do standalone flower essence sessions, but they tend to be an integrative part of the work on the table. When I'm working with the body is often expressing the psyche and the emotional journey that's currently on, and flower essences support that. There can be a lot that goes on with the session, and there can be very, 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 very subtle things. It's, I've worked sometimes with clients for 10 sessions and gone like, well, we don't know really what happened here. And then we've left
Mm.
the work, and
Mm.
then their lives have changed. It's almost like that we've had enough of an energetic momentum that they've kind of resourced, and now they kind of go like, actually, I don't want to do this stuff that I've been doing anymore. I need to shift in this direction.
Wow.
So sometimes there's a energetic catalyst, a catharsis catalyst, that there's just enough energy has moved through the system in order for the change to be made. And sometimes as well, this is not the right fit for some people.
Mm.
They need
That's
something else. And I'm always kind of, conventionally, if we're dealing with sort of longer held issues, we're looking at 5 to 6 sessions to look at
Mm.
some kind of energetic shift, to look at
Mm.
some kind of movement in a direction of away from that foundational template, or
Mm.
moving in a direction just like, actually, that's not defining me just as much. So in
Mm.
order for that kind of energetic momentum to reach a certain charge, 5 to 6 sessions tend to be what's
Mm,
required. I have had clients who've been going through stuff and it's been 1 to 2 sessions because it's been so up and so direct.
mm.
The material has moved through within that time. And so every person and every person's journey is different. So, yeah.
I just suddenly have this epiphany moment when you was describing the process, because I think that's why your life experience was so important here. And that was exactly what happened when you have first experienced your chronic fatigue syndrome. Is the Western medical model didn't have an answer for your
No,
problems.
no, I was told emphatically. Yeah.
Yeah, and even early day wasn't many people know what it is, and you really experience there's nothing there can offer you to help you to retain and regain your
Nothing.
body
Yeah.
energy.
No. There's a phrase called the dark night of the soul where you are
Yeah,
journeying through material which maybe you have no ground for. There's
yeah,
there's no there's no external ground for that material. There's no conventional kind of wisdom that's attached to it. You have to go and explore somewhere else other than the mainstream in order to kind of, and thankfully others
yes.
journeyed here. You are not alone in this journey.
And I think what most amazing is you learn how to reset your body over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't it? So it's like
Yeah.
literally, that is
Yeah.
what you have to
Yeah.
do every day, is to reset your
Yeah.
bodies
Yeah.
so that it can function.
So I woke up this morning thinking like
Yeah.
I was, I had a slightly sore throat. My energy was kind of felt really depleted, and I was wondering whether we were going to be able to do this talk
Yes.
today. And so I went and finished doing more chutney making, and went and made my bed, took care of what I could take care of. And this is
Mm,
often what chronic fatigue syndrome is about: is what can I take care of today? What do I
mm.
have just enough energy for? And so I actually just did that, went and had a shower, sat down to meditate. Sat down to meditate for about an hour and was able to come back to a relationship with myself, to a relationship with
Wow.
those forces that support me, and those support forces which not only support me, but are distributive in their essence, that they don't want to be remaining through me. They want to kind of
Yes.
move my heart into action, move my heart into service, move my heart into relationship. And so I sat with those energies for about an hour, and then I messaged you and I said, I think
Mm.
we can do this.
Yeah.
And so, you know, literally when you say reset, every day I'm
Yeah.
resetting
Every
this.
day. Yeah. Because what you just described for your clients is like they have tried every means that they can, and to a point where they don't know how to restart again. Your
Yes.
work really helped them to reset their energies, the nervous system, so then
Yeah.
they can start making those changes. Because in my head, I was thinking like for some people who have tried everything, even they try so hard to stop drinking, but they just couldn't. It's helping them to reset. There's somewhere they can start again.
I'm somebody who is honoring a person's unfoldment, um, day to day as feels appropriate. I'm there to assist, and all of the different journeys that I've been on and the tools that I have are there to kind of help that process. But also, there's a lot of lived experience in the tank. There
Yeah.
is.
And I think that's the beauty of it. And that's the reason why I've been wanting to talk to you through a podcast, is so that
Yeah.
people who are looking for other way instead of
Yeah.
just seeking from the Western medical system that they have tried and they know it's not working, even like myself,
Yeah.
to find another way that works for us. Because sometimes we know what we have tried, we know
Yeah.
there's other form
Okay.
of healing besides this Western model,
Okay.
really. There's one question I always ask people before we finish the podcast, which is, if you can go back to a time of your younger self, and what would you say to him?
So there was a very clear pivotal moment in my teenage years when I was 14, and I knew I was gay. I hadn't come out at that stage, and I still wet my bed. You sucked that finger. So there was a lot of kind of obviously really strong emotional processes which were trying to work through me that I didn't have resource for. And I looked in the mirror and I said, I have no idea what you want me here for, God. But if you want me to stay here, because it was that moment, do I stay? Do I want to stay? Am I going to
Mm.
stay in this life? If you want me to be here, then let me be of service. And so I would say to that younger version of myself that the soul was already present, that you already were in contact with your soul because you were asking for something beyond yourself.
Absolutely.
I
Wow.
was asking for whatever I was carrying, the depth of what I was carrying to serve accordingly. Because
Wow.
I did not know how I could carry it otherwise. And so I would say to that 14-year-old is every single step along the way, the soul was part of your life. The soul was overseeing that unfoldment and that needed support and that needed step by step by step capacity to realize that the world had your back. Not just friends, but the world, the earth had my back. The air that I breathed had my back. The seat that I sat on had my back. The soul that brought me into this incarnation absolutely had my back and still has my back. So you know, I would say you will be held well for the next 40 and and you will learn a little bit more about spirit and soul and their presence in the human existence, and what a great thing that has been.
Thank you, Michael. You have me in tear while you're saying that. So yeah, this is beautiful. And thank you again